The great hall of the alien palace was filled with tension. Tall banners of deep blue and silver hung from the ceiling, but their shine could not hide the fear in the room. The kingdom was weak after years of endless wars. The alien king, once proud and unshaken, now sat heavy on his throne. His people looked to him for answers, but he knew the truth. Alone, his kingdom could not survive another attack. He had one treasure more precious than his crown: his daughter. She was fragile since birth, her health often breaking under the weight of even small burdens. Many whispered that she would never be able to lead the kingdom, never stand strong like her ancestors. But to the king, she was not just his heir, she was his heart. The court gathered as the king rose to his feet. His voice echoed across the chamber, slow and firm. Our enemies grow stronger, our allies turn their backs. But there is one race we have ignored for too long. The humans, a murmur spread. Humans were known across the stars for their reckless courage, their strange willpower, and their ability to survive against impossible odds. The aliens had never trusted them, calling them unpredictable. But now, the king was about to change. That, I will offer my daughter, the king declared, to a human protector, not as a gift but as a bond of trust. She will be guarded, not hidden. And through this, our people will learn to stand with humans. The princess lowered her head, her hands trembling in her lap. She was not ready for this. She had always been shielded, kept away from the chaos of war. Her life had been soft chambers, warm blankets, and quiet healers. Now her father was offering her future into the hands of a human, a stranger. The court erupted. "Your Majesty, you cannot!" shouted an elder. "Humans are wild. They will break her spirit." Another spat. "She is too weak. No human will want such a burden." But the king silenced them with a single raised hand. "The world sees her as fragile," he said, turning his gaze toward his daughter. "But I see something else. I see a fire waiting for breath, and I believe a human can give her that breath." The chosen human was brought before the court. He was not dressed like a noble. His armor was scarred from battles, and his face carried lines of hardship, though he was still young. His name echoed simply in the hall, and he bowed with respect, but not fear. The princess looked at him, unsure. He was different from her people. His skin, his stance, the steady way his eyes met hers. He did not look at her with pity like others did. Instead, he looked at her as if she was already capable of more than she knew. The king spoke again. "Human, do you accept this task? Will you stand by my daughter, not as her jailer, but as her guardian and guide?" The human's voice was calm. "I will protect her with my life, but more than that, I will help her stand on her own." These words struck the princess like a spark. No one had ever spoken to her that way. Everyone always promised to protect her, to shield her, to carry her away from danger. But this human spoke as if he believed she could rise, not remain in shadows. Later, in the quiet of the garden, the princess finally spoke to him. Her voice was soft, almost afraid to break. "Do you know what they call me? The fragile one. The daughter of glass. They say I will never be more than a shadow of my father." The human knelt beside her, not out of duty, but out of respect. "Do you believe them?" She hesitated, her eyes lowering. "Sometimes I do." He shook his head. "Then let me tell you what I see. I see someone still standing after years of being told she is weak. I see someone braver than all of them, because you have carried a burden they cannot imagine." Her chest tightened. No healer, no court member, not even her father had said such words to her. The days that followed were filled with whispers in the palace. Some mocked the king's decision, others feared it. But the human began his duty quietly, walking beside the princess, speaking to her as though she were not a fragile jewel, but a person of strength. When she asked about Earth, his stories were strange, but full of warmth. He spoke of storms humans had survived, of mountains climbed, of oceans crossed without fear. He spoke of a world where even the smallest child learned to struggle and rise. For the first time, the princess felt a strange stirring inside her. She began to imagine herself not as fragile, but as someone who might one day walk into a storm and not break. One evening, she asked him directly, "Why would you risk yourself for me? You know I am not strong." His reply was simple, but his eyes carried unshaken belief. Strength is not always in the body. Sometimes it is in the heart, and I think your heart is stronger than you know. The words echoed in her long after he left her chambers. In that moment, the fragile daughter of the alien king began to feel a spark. It was small, hidden deep, but it was there. And perhaps, with the strange courage of a human beside her, it could one day grow into fire. The palace woke early each morning, but the princess always rose later. Her fragile body often betrayed her, forcing her to spend long hours in bed with healers at her side. Yet now, things began to change. The human who had been chosen for her, a man of scars and calm strength, refused to treat her as weak. Instead, he encouraged her to step into the sun each day, even if her steps were small and uncertain. On the first morning, she looked at him doubtfully. "The healers say I should not leave the chambers too often." The human shook his head gently. "Healers want to keep you safe, but safety is not the same as living. Come, even if only for a few steps." Hesitant but curious, she allowed him to guide her into the palace gardens. The air was crisp, and the soft light of dawn painted the flowers with gold. For the first time in weeks, she felt the wind against her face. She closed her eyes and breathed deeply. "See?" the human said. "The world does not break you. It welcomes you." She gave him a small, shy smile. It was a beginning. Days turned into weeks. The human spent time teaching her things no one else thought she needed to learn. He showed her how to balance her body, how to strengthen her breathing, and even how to hold a simple wooden staff for support. At first, she stumbled often, but each time she fell, he helped her rise without scolding, without pity. "Falling is not failing," he told her. "Failing is refusing to rise again." She began to carry those words in her heart. In the evenings, they would sit by the fountain where water sang over stone. She asked him about Earth, about humans, about their strange resilience. He told her of storms that destroyed cities, yet humans rebuilt. Of winters so harsh that people nearly starved, yet they endured. Of journeys across space when no one believed they could survive, but they did. "Why do humans always fight so hard to live?" she asked one night. He looked into the rippling water before answering. "Because we know life is not given freely. Every breath is won. Every tomorrow is earned." Those words shook her. For so long she had been treated as fragile, hidden away from the weight of living. But this human spoke as if she, too, could learn to fight for each breath. The court noticed the changes. Where once the princess had stayed silent during council meetings, she now spoke with quiet confidence. Where once she sat pale and withdrawn, she now walked slowly but firmly into the halls. Courtiers whispered, "She looks different. Is it because of the human?" Not everyone was pleased. Some nobles scowled, saying, "She is being filled with dangerous ideas. A fragile flower cannot become steel." Yet others began to see hope. "Perhaps she is not as weak as we thought," murmured a younger advisor. One afternoon, a small incident tested her new strength. While walking the palace corridors, she and the human came upon two young nobles mocking her behind her back. "The glass princess," one sneered, "held together only by healers." "Now guarded by a human," the other laughed. "How pitiful!" The princess froze, her heart beating fast. Once, She would have turned away in silence, too ashamed to answer. But now she remembered the human's words. Falling is not failing. She turned to face them. Her voice trembled at first, but it grew stronger. You call me fragile, yet you hide behind your words. I may stumble, but I rise again. Can either of you say the same? The hall fell quiet. The nobles turned red with shame and walked away, muttering under their breath. The human looked at her with quiet pride. Well said. She let out a shaky breath and smiled. My heart was beating so fast. That's how courage feels, he replied. As weeks passed, her bond with the human grew. She asked about his scars, the battles he had fought. He did, not boast, but spoke plainly. Each scar is a lesson. Pain teaches us what comfort cannot. She thought of her own frail body, of the years she had felt like a burden. Perhaps her weakness, too, could teach her something. Then came the day of the trial. An alarm rang through the palace. Intruders had breached the outer wall. Rebels loyal to no king had come to test the weakened kingdom. Guards rushed through the corridors, and panic filled the court. The human stood ready, but the princess surprised him. I will not hide, she said. If my people must see me as weak, let them at least see me standing. He looked at her carefully, then nodded. Very well. Stay close to me, but do not be silent. Your voice can be as strong as any blade. Together, they walked into the outer hall where rebels had broken through. Swords clashed, shouts echoed, and fear hung heavy in the air. The rebels mocked when they saw her. The fragile daughter? One sneered. This is the kingdom's defense? Her legs shook, but she lifted her chin. Yes, I am the daughter, and I stand with my people. The human fought beside her, swift and fierce, his movements protecting her, yet never pulling her away from the moment. She watched him fight not just with strength, but with determination. In a sudden moment, one rebel slipped past the guard line and rushed toward her. Gasps filled the hall. Once, she would have collapsed in terror. But now, remembering the human's lessons, she grabbed the wooden staff at her side. Her hands trembled, but she raised it and blocked the strike long enough for the human to disarm the attacker. Her people saw it. The court saw it. The fragile princess had stood her ground. After the battle, she sat trembling in the quiet chamber. The human knelt beside her. You did more than you think. You faced fear and did not fall. Tears filled her eyes, not of weakness, but of release. For the first time, I felt alive. He smiled. That is because you chose to live, not just survive. Word spread quickly. Whispers became stories, and stories became belief. The fragile princess was no longer seen only as weak. She was becoming something more, and deep inside, she began to feel it too. The palace was quieter after the attack, but the whispers never stopped. Every corner of the kingdom now buzzed with tales of the fragile princess who had lifted a staff against danger. Some called it luck. Some said it was the human's influence, and others believed it was the first sign of her hidden strength. Whatever the truth, she was no longer unseen. The princess herself felt the change deep inside. She still woke each morning with weakness in her limbs, but her heart no longer sank under it. She had tasted what it meant to face fear, and she wanted more. The human noticed it too. As they trained in the gardens, he watched how she no longer asked, "Can I do this?" Instead, she asked, "How do I do this better?" "You are no longer fragile in spirit," he said one morning as she struggled to balance the staff in her hands. She paused, breathing hard, sweat running down her face. "Then I must make my body listen too," he smiled. "Step by step, strength is built, not given." The king watched from the high balcony. At first, he had chosen the human out of desperation, hoping only that his daughter would be protected. Now he saw something unexpected, his daughter's spirit burning brighter than ever. It gave him hope, but also fear. Change was dangerous. In a court filled with jealous nobles, one evening during a meeting with the council, the debate grew heated. "Your Majesty," an elder spoke sharply, "allowing the princess to stand beside humans and hold weapons is reckless. She is our heir, not a soldier." The king's gaze hardened. "She is my daughter, and she will not be caged." "But she is fragile," another countered. Before the king could answer, the princess herself stepped forward. Her voice was clear, though her hands trembled. "I may be fragile, but I am not broken. And if you fear what I might become, then perhaps you do not fear for me, but for yourselves." The council fell silent. Even the king stared at her, proud and astonished. After the meeting, the human found her in the corridor. "That took courage," he said. Her lips curved into a small smile. "My heart was racing, but I remembered your words. Courage feels like that," he nodded. "And you spoke with more strength than most warriors." Her confidence grew, but so did danger. The rebels who had attacked the palace were not finished. Rumors spread of more raids gathering in the shadows. Some nobles whispered of removing the human, fearing his influence. The human knew this, but he remained calm. "The more they resist," he told her, "the more you must stand. Strength is not proven when things are easy. It is proven when everything is against you." The next trial came sooner than expected. One morning, scouts reported that rebels had taken a village near the edge of the kingdom. The council urged the king to send soldiers, but fear lingered. What if the rebels were baiting them into a trap? The court argued endlessly. The princess rose from her seat. "I will go with the human to see the truth." The hall erupted. "You cannot. It is too dangerous." But the king, though torn, saw the fire in her eyes. "If she wishes to go, she will go, but she must return alive." The journey to the village was long, and for the first time, the princess left the palace walls. Every step into the wild lands tested her body. Yet the human walked beside her, steady and silent, guiding her through forests and hills. When they reached the village, the sight was grim. Homes were burned, families scattered. But not all hope was lost. The rebels had not destroyed everything. They had taken supplies and left threats carved into the walls: "Submit or perish." The villagers, frightened and broken, knelt before the princess. "Your Highness, we thought the palace had forgotten us." She shook her head, her fragile hands trembling as she helped a child rise. "We have not forgotten. I stand with you." Her words brought tears to the people. The humans saw it too, the effect of her presence. Though she was fragile, her courage gave strength to others. That night, by the fireside, she whispered to the human, "I never knew what my people lived through. I only knew walls and silence. But now I see their pain." "And now they see you," he answered. "Not as fragile, but as their princess." Their journey back was not safe. On the second day, rebels ambushed them in the hills. Steel clashed under the fading light. The human fought fiercely, but their numbers were many. One rebel slipped past him, rushing toward the princess. Her heart pounded. In that instant, she remembered the sneers of nobles, the whispers of weakness, and the fire of standing in council. She raised her staff, blocking the strike. With trembling hands, she pushed back, shouting, "I am not fragile!" The sound startled the rebels. Her voice carried across the hills like a bell of defiance. The human struck swiftly, driving them away. When silence returned, the princess collapsed to her knees, shaking from both fear and triumph. The human steadied her. "You see, strength is not about winning every fight. It is about refusing to be broken." She looked at him, her breath unsteady. I thought I was weak all my life. But today, for the first time, I believe I can change." He smiled. "You are already changing." When they returned to the palace, the villagers' stories traveled faster than the wind. They told of a princess who stood beside them, who did not hide, who faced rebels with trembling hands yet unshaken heart. The court could no longer deny it. The fragile daughter of the alien king was becoming something more. But in the shadows of the kingdom, enemies plotted. They saw her rise not as hope, but as a threat, and they whispered, "The fragile one must be broken before she becomes unbreakable. The true test was yet to come." The palace felt heavier now. The fragile princess, who had once hidden behind curtains of silk, was changing before the eyes of everyone. Some cheered her courage, while others watched with fear and jealousy. The whispers in dark halls grew louder, and the enemies of the kingdom prepared to strike from within. One night the princess sat in the quiet of her chamber, the soft moonlight spilling across her pale face. The human sat beside her, his eyes steady and full of concern. "You carry more than your body now," he said. "The weight of a kingdom, the eyes of many." She nodded slowly. "Sometimes it feels too much. I am still fragile. I don't know if I can be what they need." He reached out and took her hand gently. "You don't have to be perfect. Just be yourself. That is enough." Their moments of peace were short-lived. The rebels had regrouped, and their next move was clear. They would strike at the heart of the palace. The king called his council to prepare defenses, but fear had taken root in many hearts. Some nobles whispered that the princess's growing strength was dangerous, that her human protector was a poison to the throne. One cold evening, a trusted advisor came to the human alone. "You must leave," he warned quietly. "There are those who will do anything to remove you." The human looked at him calmly. "I protect the princess, and through her, the kingdom. I will not abandon them." The advisor shook his head sadly. "Then you must be ready. The court is no friend to you now." The princess overheard the warning later, and her heart clenched. She had never felt more alone, yet the human's presence gave her courage. "We face them together," she said firmly. Their chance came faster than expected. On the night of the lunar eclipse, rebels slipped into the palace, aided by traitors within the court. Silent shadows moved through the corridors. The human was alerted quickly and raced to the princess's chambers. "We must move," he whispered urgently. She nodded, clutching the wooden staff the human had given her. Despite her trembling hands, she stood. "No more hiding," she said. Together they moved through secret passages and hidden doors. The rebels were closing in, but the human's steady presence kept her calm. At the palace gates, the rebels clashed with guards, swords flashing in the moonlight. The princess's heart pounded as she watched from behind the walls. Then came the moment no one expected. A traitor confronted the princess, a man once trusted in the court. "Step aside, fragile one," he sneered. "Your fate is sealed." She gripped her staff tighter. "I am not fragile," the traitor laughed. "Words are cheap. You cannot fight." But she did not answer with words. She took a breath, steadied herself, and raised the staff in a wide arc. It connected with the traitor's arm, knocking the weapon away. The guards rushed forward, capturing the traitor. Shock rippled through the palace. How could the fragile princess defend herself? The human came to her side. "You surprised us all." Her lips trembled. "I surprised myself." The rebellion was crushed by dawn, but the price was high. Several nobles who had sided with the rebels were imprisoned, and trust in the court was broken. The king called a gathering. He stood before his people, his voice strong. "The kingdom faces darkness from within and without. But we also have light. My daughter has shown us that strength is not only in muscle and steel, but in courage and heart." The princess stepped forward, her voice clear. "I am still fragile in body, but my will is strong. I will not let fear rule our home." The crowd erupted in cheers, but some faces remained cold and wary. After the gathering, the princess found herself alone with the human. "They will not stop," she said. "I am becoming a target." He nodded. "And that is why you must become stronger." He spent days training her in new skills: how to move quietly, how to read the emotions in a room, how to stand firm when words are weapons. Slowly, her confidence grew, and with it, her ability to lead. The healers noticed too. Her body, though, still fragile, seemed to hold more energy. It was not a miracle of medicine, but of spirit. One afternoon, the king came to her chamber. "You have changed, my daughter. You carry the kingdom's hope." She looked at him, eyes shining with new fire. "And I carry the human who showed me how." The king smiled. "Then together, you will lead us into a new era." But the princess knew the war was not over. Enemies still lurked in shadows, waiting for their chance. Yet she was no longer the fragile girl she had been. She was a daughter, a leader, and soon, a queen. And beside her stood a human who believed in her, who helped her grow. In the quiet moments, she whispered to herself, "I am fragile, but I am not broken." And that was the truth that would change everything. The days after the rebellion were tense. The palace was filled with whispers, some of hope and others of doubt. The fragile princess had proven herself in ways no one expected, but not everyone was ready to accept her new strength. Some nobles still looked at her with suspicion. They whispered behind closed doors that a human should never stand beside the future queen. They feared change and the power that came with it. But the princess no longer feared their words. She had learned from the human that true strength came from within, not from titles or armor. One morning, the human found her standing alone in the palace courtyard. The sun was warm on her face, and she seemed calm, but her eyes held a quiet determination. "Do you remember when we first met?" she asked softly. He smiled. "How could I forget? You were so fragile, and yet your spirit was fierce." She laughed, a soft sound. "I thought I was weak, but you showed me I was wrong. And you showed me that strength comes in many forms," he replied. Their bond had grown stronger, built on trust and respect. The princess was no longer just a fragile daughter. She was becoming a leader, ready to face the challenges ahead. But the peace was fragile. Word came that rebels were gathering again, planning a new attack. This time, they sought not only to destroy the kingdom, but to capture the princess herself. The king called a council meeting to discuss the threat. Many urged caution, suggesting the princess stay hidden. But she stood and spoke with quiet power. "I am not a prize to be hidden. I am a leader to be seen. If the rebels want to take me, they will find me ready." The human watched her with pride. "You are stronger than you realize," the princess nodded. "And I have learned from the strongest." Together, they prepared for the coming battle. The human trained the palace guards, teaching them new tactics and strategies. The princess worked to unite the people, visiting villages and speaking to her subjects. She listened to their fears and hopes, promising to protect them. Her fragile body tired easily, but her spirit burned bright. One evening, as they walked through the palace gardens, the princess spoke of her fears. "Sometimes I wonder if I can truly protect them all," she said. The human took her hand gently. "You don't have to do it alone. We face this together." The night before the battle, the princess could not sleep. She stood on the balcony, looking at the stars. The human joined her, standing quietly by her side. "Do you believe we will win?" she asked. He looked at the sky. "I believe in you, and that is enough." The battle came at dawn. Rebels attacked with fury, their numbers overwhelming. The palace shook with the sound of clashing steel and cries of warriors. The princess fought alongside her guards, her staff moving with surprising skill. The human was always near, protecting her from the deadliest strikes. At one moment, a rebel broke through the line and aimed for the princess. She raised her staff just in time, blocking the blow. Pain shot through her arm, but she did not fall. "You are not fragile!" the human shouted, fighting beside her. Her eyes met his, and she found new strength. She pushed forward, leading the charge that drove the rebels back. When the battle ended, the palace was battered but standing. The princess was exhausted, her body aching, but her heart was full. The people cheered for her courage and strength. She had become a symbol of hope and resilience. In the days that followed, the king held a ceremony to honor the princess and her human protector. He declared that their bond was the future of the kingdom, a bridge between two worlds. The princess smiled, knowing that she was no longer fragile. She was strong, not because of her body, but because of her heart and the trust she had built. She looked at the human and whispered, "Thank you for showing me who I truly am." He smiled back. "You were never fragile. You just needed to see it." Together, they faced the future, ready for whatever challenges it would bring. And the kingdom, once broken and fearful, began to heal. The kingdom was changing. The fragile princess had become a symbol of hope and courage. The people no longer saw her as weak, but as a leader who had risen through pain and fear to stand strong. The king watched his daughter with pride. She was no longer the girl who needed protection. She was a woman who protected others. Yet the challenges were not over. Beyond the borders, enemies watched and waited for a chance to strike. The princess knew she had to be ready, not only for battle, but to lead her people into a new era of peace. The human who had stood by her side since the beginning had become more than a protector. He was a partner, a friend, and a guide. Together, they worked to unite the kingdom and build alliances with other worlds. One day, the princess stood before a crowd in the palace square. Her voice was strong and clear. "We have faced darkness and fear, but we have also found strength in each other. This kingdom will no longer live in the shadow of weakness. We will rise together." The crowd cheered, their faith renewed. But the greatest test was still ahead. A new threat emerged, an army larger and more powerful than any before. The kingdom prepared for war. The princess and the human led the charge. Their bond inspired the soldiers and citizens alike. The human fought fiercely, but he always made sure the princess was safe. During the battle, the princess showed her true strength. Despite her fragile body, she commanded the troops with courage and wisdom. Her presence lifted the weary and gave hope to the frightened. When the enemy was finally defeated, the kingdom celebrated. The fragile daughter had become a queen, and, with her human companion, they had changed the fate of their world. The king stepped forward and crowned his daughter. "You have proven that strength is not just in the body, but in the heart. You have brought honor to our family and hope to our people." The queen looked at the human and smiled. "This victory is ours together. I could not have done it without him." The human bowed respectfully. "It is my honor to serve by your side." Peace returned, and the kingdom flourished. The princess, once fragile, was now a leader known across the stars for her courage and kindness. In quiet moments, she would remember the days when she felt weak and unsure. But now, she knew that true strength was never about being perfect. It was about rising again, no matter how many times life tried to break you. And with the human beside her, she was ready for whatever the future held.